Hello and welcome everyone. This is Raisa. Thank you for being here. Today we're going to talk about these days mindset and humanity's trajectory of the focus. You probably seeing by now that this year events are happening very quickly, one after another. And it's from different areas of our lives in different parts of the world. At this point, everything seems very unstable. It's as if we don't know what's going to happen the next day. Not like years ago where we thought, yeah, I know what's going to happen tomorrow and after tomorrow, and I can plan, right? These days, it's different. So everybody already knows that plans could change. This feeling unstable, when it's touching every area of our lives, also touches our relationship with the divine, also with our higher selves, and with our own selves. Well, with higher selves, right? Thinking of how global events, fears, scarcity, threats, warnings, all of that affects us, makes you wonder what kind of changes or what type of strengthening needs to happen. So I do encourage you to practice unity, union, consciousness between you and you, the most important connection you can ever have. And then practicing compassion and understanding towards others. Because we live in the world of polarities, there's got to be balance. And it is difficult at times to maintain that balance. Think about each polarity standing up for its own, or maybe not. So it is that tug of war. It is that trying to prove who's right, who's wrong, who carries the truth, who's not, who knows more, who doesn't. There comes a time when humanity would have to rise up above trying to prove something to another. Who knows more, or who can accomplish more. Of course, it is not easy when, again, you are in the world of polarity. How do you maintain this balance? I would say one of the keys would be focus. Focus on that you want to be, despite perhaps peer pressure, mocking, and so on. There's much of that peer pressure coming from different sides, especially from the platforms that are becoming supposedly more mainstream. Sometimes changes do happen. It basically shatters perception on life when the whole focus was trying to catch up to something specific that was created to keep the mindset away from its focus point. It's like, what are you talking about? Can you be more specific? Okay. So, let's say social media platforms, or certain places to eat, or get food delivered, or certain shows, certain places where you believe you get your information that you believe helps you be updated. Have you ever thought of, because of the rule of balance, if certain things start glitching, where something's gonna give? Even though, let's say the intention of certain platforms was to help humanity be more kind or more compassionate or be respectful to one another, there will always be this polarity that wants to push domination, power struggle, control, as well as using another for whatever gain. It doesn't matter at this point. So try to start paying attention to this because it's very eye-opening and it's incredible. It causes you to become so neutral as to not view certain things with same eyes anymore. But from a neutral perspective, there are things you'll discover, and they've been there all along. What I'm talking about is a mass mind manipulation, but it is about the let's say consumer, to open their eyes and to realize what's going on and what they are feeding. See, this world of polarity, it's like a balloon. Whichever way is being fed, it wants to be fed more and it creates more space for that, but there is always the opposite polarity that wants a chunk of that too. And it takes that mind awareness to catch it, to not become prey to that. Because it's very easy. Just because you think you awakened from, let's say, an organized religion, right? You can actually get into another one, but without a building. It's the same thing. So just because you don't go somewhere on Sunday, but if it's same judgmental surrounding that claims that it has the truth, and God forbid you think otherwise, or do something else like, I don't know, eat meat, drink coffee, or whatever else people judge. It's very easy, and perhaps for you, it's no big deal, and you would never judge another. Or there are plenty who will. And both of these polarities are drinking from the same well. By drinking from the same well, replenishing it actually too. Because it's enabling whoever produces to make more. And it is that labyrinth, or it is that paradox, where you might say, well, where is the beginning and where is the end? And how can this change? That's a great question. What I've noticed, the beings who want humanity to elevate their state of consciousness to a vaster understanding of the divine and their place in the cosmos, they explain how important it is to keep the focus on what is it that you want to be. This is why it's important to be organized. So, for example, journaling your goal spiritually, physically, emotionally, what type of a person you want to be. Because when you accomplish that, or you think you accomplish that, if you don't continue upgrading that, if you don't continue bettering that, you're going to stagnate. And when you stagnate, you go backwards. When you go backwards after the stagnation, it's actually more toxic than where you were when you're trying to get to that position in the first place. The reason why is because connection to the divine is so holy and it is established. By stagnating and going backwards, it is almost like denying it. So when you deny by action or intention, it is like you are saying you don't want to be it or a part of it, which doesn't change the divine. It changes your relationship or your connection to it. Like statically or not clearly connecting. And imagine if one person does it, 2 people, 3, and more, and thousands, tens of thousands. Being a part of society, being a part of community, sooner or later, you might get affected. What happens then? Then it is either humanity has to make drastic changes, which we are seeing. On one side, you hear saving the planet. And there's this beautiful movement which cleans the oceans and other waters from plastics, saving animals and sea creatures. Then there is another side that tries to escape this planet, wanting to create another way of living somewhere else, creating another place for the habitat, even though the earth is already for that anyway. But why? Because realizing that the resources are depleting for commercial purposes. That which was natural and was for the sustenance and progression of the civilization, naturally produced by the earth, within the earth, on the earth, was used let's say through cutting trees, holding on to artifacts, archaeological findings, and you can imagine more. You may call it unfair for someone to hold on to some knowledge or certain historical findings from the populace by knowing more, yet keeping the populace clueless. Yet the populace is not going to do anything about it because the populace sees the next shiny thing that is produced from the very natural resources of the earth, but the product causes the very same mind of that populace to go into a slave mindset. Do you see the circle of that? Do you see the labyrinth? And it is that chasing its own tail. Because we are in the reality where polarity must exist, there comes balance. If it doesn't come from within, it must come from without, as it seems, to the third dimensional mindset, because in actuality it is all in unity. But to the third dimensional mindset, it will come from the without, the outside. When it does, if the within is not prepared, it causes a shock, because the mind was only focused on one side, could never imagine or try something else. Basically put all the eggs in one basket, so to speak. It doesn't work, because by changing your perception, you will realize, wow, that is so far from the truth. So where is the truth? Perhaps right now it is not about the truth, but understanding that the drastic changes are happening, and no matter how much, at this point, you might want to escape this planet, or this reality, or try to save the planet. When you see the signs, let's say weather changes, and I don't mean the artificial weather manipulation, I mean the real, because when the planet is tired, she shows it, and it's brutal. There is nobody to complain to and say, excuse me, but the planet caused this damage. Can someone do something? You can't, because it's called inhabitant of the planet. So you're on it means you have to abide by its rules. But here come energies that all of a sudden want to create their own rules on something that has its own natural laws. And she tolerates and tolerates and tolerates, hoping that the original seed would keep its originality, naturality. But it doesn't, because it doesn't have a long enough attention span, because it sees something new when it's told that it's going to make your life better, even though with every next and next and next production of certain product, if anything, it becomes more mind enslaved. But the consumer doesn't see it that way, because the consumer only sees the shiny part, doesn't see that it is at the expense of its freedom to think, freedom to speak, freedom to express, freedom to whatever. And again, it does have to balance. But when it is allowed by the populace to move to such a degree where it's pushing the whole civilization down, if you want to see it as down, then by the, let's say, divine interference, if it wants to tilt the scale, to balance it upon the impact, energetic interference, whether from outer space, from the sun, angelic realm, you name it. What do you think will happen to the human mind, to the energies, to the surface of the planet, and to the inner of the planet? But the bodies, the human, are on the surface too, the ones that are feeling that burn the most. And everyone thinks that the way they see life is exactly how it is done in other countries, but it's not. What I'm talking about is global and even galactic, and perhaps even more. There are sides. One says it is time to reveal and release the disclosure. It can't be hidden because the outer, from the outer space, is making itself known. Because if you close your eyes, like a fundamentalist, that there is only one earth, and that's it. And there's only humans that we know of on the surface of the earth, that's it. Well, that's the shattering of the mindset. When you can't deny, when you see the signs that there's another form of life, outer. But then another side of polarity says, oh, wouldn't it be fun to fake it also? As to make people believe that whatever they saw was also fake. Do you see how this works? But if you're not focused, you will disregard it all. And what's gonna happen? You go back to where you started again. Until one more divine intervention. And then again, and then again. But at some point, something is gonna give. The human life, it's not forgotten because other realms, other places, believe it or not, but they flourish if we flourish. You might think, well, what do they care? But we are multidimensional species, meaning if we're not doing so well in the connection and the flow with the divine, those ones that share that multidimensionality, they feel it and they feel for us. What happens when you feel for someone and you're compassionate? You want to help. Their civilizations are not stingy with love because they don't see it as, I'm giving you, so I'm probably gonna get something out of it. They see it as, my cup is overfloweth, and it is my delight to share with you. Here, take it. That's why they want to remind us. And you will start seeing more and more. It will be harder for the fundamentalist. Be compassionate to them at the same time. If you cannot help them, let them figure it out on their own. After all, everybody has their soul, everybody's got their higher self, and they take care of their aspects. We all develop in our own way, with our own speed. You can't force someone. Just because it's easy for you, doesn't mean it would be easy for another, because 5 years ago, it wouldn't have been easy for you. Okay. So what does consumerism have to do with extraterrestrials? Or the changes on the planet? What does that have to do with anything? It has to do with you. It has to do with your heart, with your mind. It has to do with your life and your connection to the divine, because everything is connected and everything pushes its own side. You may choose, or you may be neutral, you may be an observer, because whatever you might fight for will have another polarity that will want to fight that. Then what do? First is being open-minded. And through the process of knowing thyself, you have your own inner wires, nervous system, and antennas, so to speak, your telepathic abilities that let you know the next rest area, or to make a turn, or to stop, or to go faster, or to slow down. Because as it escalates, at times doing less might be more, meaning resting your mind and physically resting might be helpful. And at times, being more active would be also more proactive. Only you can figure it out for yourself. And it always starts from knowing thyself. Not necessarily acknowledging or knowing thyself in the sense of, okay, I'm a child of God, okay, I accept that, and that's all there is to it. It is also seeing what you like and you don't like about yourself, what you prefer, what you not prefer. Perhaps even feeling guilty about certain things or being ignorant about something. So, discover that. It's not about the judgment, it is about the constructive criticism of finding out as much as possible about yourself, because obviously something that is artificially observing knows people better than people know themselves. Every movement, every purchase, every preference. How is that possible? Well, we might say, well, I have a busy life and I don't have time to remember all this. Well, then simplify your life, because life is for the living. Living as in making your own choices according to your own likes and dislikes. Not allowing something else to do it for you. And this goes back to the same pattern of leaving one religion, but perhaps becoming a slave of another. It could be leaving narcissistic relationship, but becoming a prey to that artificial system. It is the same thing, but people say, yay, I left that narcissistic relationship, I made it. Did you? Because if it's the same pattern, how did you make it though? And now, that which is that artificial is learning humanity so well, where for many humans, it's difficult to discern, decipher who is a real human and who is not. So let's say if you can't recognize a clone, which, yeah, would be very hard, or let's say a hybrid would be hard. But if a human cannot recognize it from a robot, that's a problem. And what it is facing extinction, so to speak, or maybe not so to speak. And I'm trying to be positive here, right? Because that's what we're told. If it's positive, then it's probably from the divine, but if it's negative, it's probably it's probably a fear-mongering. And that's another form of manipulation, is to keep you only looking for something that is perceived as positive, to have its tentacles all over your brain to say, no, don't look at something that might be negative. Look here, because this is positive. In the meantime, independence is being drained. So, I'm not saying this video is positive or negative. I'm saying make your own decisions. And every time you think that you're making your own decision, test it. Are you? Or because something pressured you, or something told you, or something made you. Just try it. The more you do, the more you discover how much artificially you are living. And then you're gonna look around and you're gonna find people around you are eating the same information as you thought was real. And then you say, I think I'm awakened. If that's what floats your boat, alright. But that would be only a minor level of that awakening, because there's much more that is to it. So where's the solution? The solution would be, again, in the living your life as a sovereign being. Not from being manipulated, told, pressured. But it is becoming tighter and tighter. in which case divine intervention is imminent. It might sound good, yay, divine intervention, but it might also be very uncomfortable and bumpy if the mind is closed or narrowed. It is actually painful. It hurts when the divine intervention happens and the psyche wasn't ready. That part in the book of Revelation where it says, they will be seeking death but won't find it. That's horrific if you think about it. Now, it was written by St. John, right? So he had his own perception on the visions. He had his own understanding and he wrote it down for us, which I'm very grateful for. It's for each and every one of you to interpret how you understand it. But just thinking of that, seeking death and not being able to find it, that means that something took power over life and death. Meaning, the human mind ended up with having no choice. Not like no choice but do something, but literally no choice. What do you think? Do you want to go and listen to some positive affirmations right now? It is almost like pushing people to become like an ostrich, putting their heads in the sand and, okay, so if I am remaining positive, I don't need to see the negative. Okay, well, the body is still on the surface and everybody could see it. The reason why I said the body is because the divine flow is a flow of that energy. Whether in the body or out of the body, your soul is still living and it's doing its progression or maybe a regression, depending on the aspect. But if you chose this path, and if you are in a human body, then it is your responsibility to make sure that your soul progresses. Because currently, right now, you have that strong connection to your soul, which means it sent you as an aspect of itself, asking you, assigning you to help it progress through these experiences. And as hard as it is, maybe you chose to be here, maybe you're not. Well, you are here. What are you gonna do about it? Because if you don't do anything about it, it will be done for you, to you, just like in history. You know how history repeats itself? And we've had so much of holy people coming in, or prophets coming in and trying to help humanity. Okay, so they came, they lived their lives, maybe they also reincarnated again, they did it again, they tried to help humanity again, and then at some point they stopped reincarnating, and now maybe the only way to get their messages is to channel them. But the thing is, if you're just satisfied with a channeled message, that means that you put a cap on your progression. Because if the being stopped reincarnating but is still progressing, then they are progressing. But if you capping your progression, it causes regression, because at some point the mind is going to say, well, if I hear that name, or if I hear what is called channeled message from them, then perhaps this is truth, not realizing that it's a message. But it is up to you, as a part of the collective, to continue helping the civilization progress. And millions of souls that sent their aspects here are depending. It's like a project. And it is unprecedented, especially in this solar system and in this part of the galaxy, or who knows, in the universe, life. There has never been a civilization who's been taken round and round and round for millennia, who is willing to extinct itself for something convenient, for something that it pays for, yet it enslaves them. Like a golden calf. Owning your own jewelry, melting it to create a calf, to worship it, makes no sense. But that's how the mind disconnects itself from the source willingly. Meaning, the source will never disconnect from you, and generally speaking, all is one. But the mind intentionally doesn't want to connect to the source. So we can either focus on positive and skip around and say everything's fine, it's all good, or use discernment in our homes, look around our lives, our relationships, and make changes, organize, that if you're not living your life, something or someone will live your life. If you're okay with that, okay. If you're not okay with that, do something about it. For a while now, in order to progress, we've been expecting at least half, so let's say 51% of the energies tip the scale to help the civilization move into the next level. This is why we have these, if you ever heard of this term, war in heaven, there are other beings that want to help, but then there are beings who don't want to help. And the Earth, being multidimensional station, willing to house whoever wants to come in because it's multidimensional. So if it houses fourth dimensional beings, fifth dimensional beings, for as long as they would like to visit, third dimensional beings are not going to see them. And so the mind is going to say, well, if we don't see them, that they don't exist and it's just a hoax or it's just stories or myths. That's the mindset. Either putting your head in the sand and pretending like you don't want to know. But there are beings that know, and they're using that power to help you keep comfortable to not know. The power to your heart, to your mind, is yours unless you give it. And it is always with consent. This is why you cannot say to God, oh, look what they did. This mind manipulation. It's not making you. It is advertised and offered, but it is up to you to buy it and feed your mind with it. This is the free will. So if many years ago, or even in some countries still now, there is physically slavery, then in parts of the world where there is none, then it might be psychological, mental, or spiritual slavery. For example, telling you what to believe in and what not to believe in. Just because you left the building and you joined the religion that doesn't have a building but is telling you, if you do this, you ascend. That's scary actually, because only you know what you need to do to ascend, because who is ascending and where are you ascending to? Aren't you ascending to yourself? This is you coming into union with you. You ever thought of that? And so there's this delusion, complete delusion. So it is up to you to draw a fine line to say, this information helps me, this information is not helping me. But it is all out in the open these days. The delusion comes from all sides, and no one might be immune to it. And it is very easy to manipulate the mind. Whatever was taking decades started taking years, and now it is like months and days where life on Earth can completely change, and there is another one coming. But if the mind is not prepared, you're not guaranteed to be able to ... What do you want? If you say, well, ascend, what does it mean? Or let's say, escape the matrix. What does it mean? Do you see how the words have been used? Just remember that every step you take, every thought you think, all contributes. It's like brewing the result. And it's gotten to the point where it's not about your physical body. Perhaps it's gotten to the point where it's about your soul. And then we wonder why other beings from other spaces, so to speak, are coming in to help. Because it's about helping souls. Your body can heal, and like other beings who reincarnated, perhaps you reincarnated. If you believe in that or you don't, it's not about that. And so I want to encourage you to think about your soul, and what would you do to help it progress? Or what does it take to keep your connection to it? What does it take? And there is no right or wrong answer, because you have that free will to decide what you want to do. And then do it. Because this new wave is approaching rapidly, and by the time it approaches, every one of us better be ready, emotionally, psychologically, mentally, spiritually. Better be ready. Personally, I have no idea what that is. Those who pay attention, they know something is about to give. But if you do spiritually look around and then look back at yourself, are you where you wanted to be when you started your spiritual practices? Are you where you wanted to be when you started questioning your reality? It's not about going down the rabbit hole. Even that doesn't help anymore, going down the rabbit hole. And it is all about your soul. You may take this message and think. You may click off, disregard it. It's up to you. Something really awesome about divine is that they just give conditions or consequences, right, upon the actions. Meaning, if you do this, this will happen. Or we encourage you to do this so that you can achieve that. Because if you don't, there's a possibility of that. And the reason why it helps to adhere to that is so that there is less problems, less static. But at the same time, it does take understanding the frequency or your own relationship with the divine to even comprehend which message is for you and is helping or not helping. This is why I never tell you to subscribe or like. I never ask you to follow. We are sovereign beings. We must make our own decisions. We cannot tell another person what to do. We cannot make another person what to do. And it takes a lot to be okay with that. And it takes a lot to appreciate that independence, because we're so conditioned to be told what to do. Buy this. This is seasonal. This is what you eat for dinner, right? Or this is what you're supposed to do at what time. Those are how we thought life should be. Everything and anything can be for something happy and for something unhappy. It is up to you as a sovereign being to make responsible decisions. And every action does have a reaction. And by God's mercy, we can have a happy outcome from this event that is unfolding. Whatever it is, by God's mercy, let it be something happy. Thank you for being here. Wishing you much love, strength, courage, and blessings.